The crying started on a Sunday, and the Husky got closer every time. That was what none of them could explain. Every dog they had ever read about moved away from a distressed child. Kodiak moved toward one. It was the wrong thing to do. Or it looked like it was. Danielle Ferreira had worked as a kindergarten teacher for 9 years. She knew children's distress signals the way mechanics know engine sounds, instinctively, through pattern recognition built over thousands of hours. She knew the difference between a tired cry and a hungry cry, an overstimulated cry and a pain cry. When her 20-month-old son, Marco, started crying on Sunday afternoon, she sorted it immediately into a category she recognized: new tooth frustration, possibly the upper left molar that had been threatening for 2 weeks. She was certain. She was wrong. Kodiak was a 4-year-old Siberian Husky, 52 pounds of silver and white, with ice blue eyes that people photographed at the dog park without asking. He was vocal, animated, opinionated in the specific way Huskies carry through life. He howled at sirens, talked back when corrected, expressed his positions on dinner timing through a range of vocalizations that Danielle's husband Paolo had started recording because they were genuinely funny. He was not a quiet dog. He was not a still dog. He was not a dog anyone would have described as soothing, which is what made Sunday incomprehensible. Marco cried at 2:15. Kodiak crossed the living room in 6 seconds and sat directly in front of the boy, close enough that their faces were at the same level. He pressed his nose forward, not a nuzzle, something more deliberate, lower, toward Marco's neck and jaw. He inhaled slowly. Then he pressed his head gently against the side of Marco's face and held it there. Marco's crying changed, not stopped. Changed. The jagged, desperate quality softened slightly into something more confused. He looked at the dog. Danielle stood in the kitchen doorway watching a husky she had never seen behave this way. She moved Kodiak back. He waited until she stepped away and came forward again. She texted Paolo, who was out, a video she took on her phone. 3 seconds of Kodiak pressing his face to Marco's. Paolo replied, "That's weird. Has he done this before?" She went back through the weekend. Saturday's crying jagged near the back door. Kodiak had been there first, face against the boys. She had assumed it was overstimulation from the dog's proximity causing the crying to continue. She had pulled him away twice. She had been reading it backward. By Monday, the pattern was clear. Every time Marco cried, which was more than usual, a fussiness Danielle attributed to the incoming molar and a slightly disrupted nap schedule. Kodiak was there before she was. Not howling, not pacing, not doing any of the things he did when he was agitated. He was still and purposeful and pressed against the side of Marco's face like he was listening to something inside the child's head. Monday night, Paolo sat in the living room and watched it happen and said what they had both been avoiding. He's making it worse. Every time Marco calms down a little, the dog gets in his face and sets him off again. Danielle didn't disagree. She had been thinking the same thing. She had a framework for this. She'd had a student once whose family dog had developed behaviors around the child that escalated distress rather than alleviating it. She called it feedback reinforcement. She believed she understood the mechanism. She put Kodiak behind the baby gate in the kitchen. He did not howl. He did not pace. He sat at the gate and watched Marco across the room with a focused attention that Danielle found, if she was honest, more unsettling than his usual behavior. Marco slept badly Monday night. Tuesday, he was listless. He ate half of what he normally ate. He wanted to be held, and then didn't want to be held. His temperature at 9 that morning was 99.1, borderline, the kind that every parenting guide says to monitor. Danielle monitored it. By 2 in the afternoon, it was 99.8. By 4, it was 100.6. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The pediatrician they reached by phone said to bring him in. Dr. Oliver Ashby, 18 years of pediatric practice, assessed Marco in 12 minutes and sent them to the lab with a urine collection kit. The results came back in 40 minutes. Marco had a urinary tract infection that had been building silently for a minimum of 4 to 6 days. UTIs in nonverbal toddlers present with no localized pain signal. The child cannot say where it hurts. They present with unexplained fussiness, disrupted sleep, reduced appetite, and low-grade fever that takes days to declare itself to a thermometer. In that window, there is no visible sign. There is, however, a chemical signal. Bacterial infection changes the biochemical composition of urine and the surrounding tissue in ways that alter the body's scent profile. Dogs detect those changes through direct olfactory contact with the skin, specifically the lymph node clusters in the neck and jaw, which were exactly where Kodiak had been pressing his face for 4 days. Dr. Ashby said, "That dog knew something was wrong before the fever did. He was checking the same area I check. He just did it first." Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Danielle drove home with Marco asleep in the back seat and the antibiotic prescription in her bag. She thought about the gate. She thought about the feedback reinforcement framework she had deployed with full professional confidence. She thought about Kodiak sitting at the mesh, watching Marco with an expression that she had read as overstimulation. And that had been, she now understood, the expression of something watching a problem it couldn't solve from the wrong side of a barrier. She opened the gate when she got home. Kodiak walked to where Marco was lying on the playmat, lowered his face to the boy's neck one more time, held it there for 3 seconds, and then laid down beside him, not on top. Beside, close enough to touch. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Marco put one hand on the dog's shoulder and closed his eyes. Kodiak exhaled slowly, blue eyes going half closed. Danielle sat on the floor across from them. The next story is about a Caucasian shepherd who kept standing between a mother and her front door, and what the security camera showed happening outside. She did not reach for her phone. She did not turn on the television. She sat on the floor of her living room and watched the Husky guard the boy who was finally, at last, going to be okay.